Avirodh Sharma is considered one of the nation's leading tabla players propagating the tradition of rhythm. Born of Indo-Caribbean parents, Avi's internationally acclaimed performances have captivated audiences all around the world. He has been featured on ZTV, TV Asia, Stars Network, NPR Radio, New York Daily News, and other major outlets. In 2015, he debuted as a tabla soloist touring Nepal and India. He performed for the famous Taj Mahotsav Festival and has played in other international festivals around the world. In 2017, he has collaborated with some of the biggest names in Bollywood fusion and Indian classical music, like Padma Shri Kailash Kher, Grammy winner Vikku Vinayakadam, and Karsh Khaled, just to name a few. His work was also featured on the 2017 album release, Melodic Intersect, Looking Forward, which for 8 weeks was #1 on the world music charts and received great reviews around the world. A multifaceted artist, Avirodh Sharma is also a composer and producer, where his work has been featured on films, fashion shows, radio, documentaries, and TV commercials. Well, Avirodh, my goodness, that resume is just so impressive. It is great to have you back on Let's Talk with Lakshmi. I know when we started the show, you were one of our very, very first guests, and throughout the years, I've just seen how much you've grown, how much you've spread your wings, not only here in our Caribbean community, but around the world. So welcome back.
Thank you for having me, Lach. It's been an amazing journey. What can I say?
It has been. I mean, I want to touch a little bit about your journey. Okay. I mean, Avirodh, your parents are from the Caribbean.
Sure.
Dad being from Trinidad, mom being from Guyana. Mm-hmm. But growing up in this home of classical Indian music.
Yeah.
What was childhood like for you?
Oh my God, it was crazy. So imagine I'm like a year and a half old, 2 years. I'm growing up in India because my parents were studying Indian music at the time. Mm-hmm. I would be waking up to my dad practicing 4 or 5 hours in the morning because he would have to take exams because he was doing his master's in Hindustani classical music. So I kind of grew up hearing classical music from childhood. And then, with my mom, as I got older, I realized, wow, she always had a beautiful voice. But then when I heard, she used to be on the radio, she never talked about the great things that she did. She was never about, selling herself, but like she was a nightingale of Demerara, and she was a powerhouse. And as I learned about these things as I got older, I was like, you're right, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, And but my parents, they've kind of set the stage for me. They've left a legacy behind. The last 25 years, they've established the Music Academy here in Queens, New York, and I'm the recipient of that. And so I just feel like I have a responsibility to continue the traditions, and they've left a legacy behind. So it's for me to now take it to the next level.
Definitely. Now, I mean, you just mentioned the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Yeah.
Avirodh, you've been doing so much, traveling here, there, India, doing concerts at Taj Mahal.
Yeah.
But yet, you're so humble about it. I mean, your music is top of music charts week after week after week, but yet you still remain very humble.
Can I share a secret with
you?
I've separated the image of Avirodh Sharma from the individual. If you can do that as an artist, you never get the whole ego struggle that many artists have to deal with. As a kid growing up, I could separate myself as the individual and where the image of Avirodh Sharma can go. And so what that always did for me was like, okay, this is where I am, but I need to separate myself from who I am. And when you can separate yourself, you can see things for what they are, hence keeping you grounded. And so that helped me so much as a teenager growing up. People like Bhai Kishore Suna, right? He was a major, I would say, role model in that. He guided me very well how to, maneuver in the industry. And so I was guided in that way. And so I was able to separate the image of Avirodh Sharma, the artist, from the individual. And that helped me to stay grounded and humble.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the image. I mean, Avirodh, you are of West Indian parents.
Yep.
But yet your music is somewhat more global, more in the East Indian.
Well, for now.
Image, for now.
Wait till,
Was that pre-planned? Was that designed that way, or did you just...
Yes, that was intentional. Yeah, because I always felt like we had to gain respect in the Indian community. And I'm kind of boldly saying that because for a long time we were never accepted as people from the West Indies. So I felt...
Why do you say that?
Lack of education, one. Two, not knowing that there's a whole culture out there in the Caribbean that exists. And naturally it happens. Communities are quick to judge and see from the outside and say, oh, these people are brown, they look like us, but they don't speak the language. And maybe they're not Indian, you know, they look like Indian, but they're wannabe Indians. And that used to like get to me a lot as a kid growing up. Luckily for me, I learned Hindi. Hindi was my first language. And I was constantly maneuvering between that struggle of being an Indian and also embracing my West Indian roots. So as a teenager, I was like struggling with, who am I? Am I actually West Indian or am I Indian in origin? And as I kind of dived deeper, I said, wait a second, our ancestors did leave India to come to the Caribbean. Yes, we have a beautiful culture in Trinidad and Guyana and Suriname, but we need to kind of go back a step further and kind of reconnect those roots. So I intentionally went back to the ground, literally to the grassroots level, gain some respect and reputation back in the Indian community, hence kind of positioning me to kind of do these bigger projects that I'm doing now. So now that perception has changed, or I'm saying it's still changing. The last 2-3 years, pioneering artists like Dexter Raghunandan, who was a great brother of mine, who was a tabla player who passed away earlier this year, he struggled with that greatly. He would be playing in the Pakistani crowds, Indian, you know, of course West Indian, you know, different audiences, and he wasn't accepted in many of those communities. But he was like a trailblazer in that way, where he was beginning to change that perception. And it's funny because we were on parallel paths, you know,
Right.
and we were able to share a lot of those struggles together. And so, you know, him gone, God rest his soul. You know, now I can say that that perception is changing. Like, look at the work Ben is doing now. You know, as a young kid, you know, like for me in rhythm, promoting this stuff in India, we are expanding the awareness of the people.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what people are telling me now, Lach? When I go to concerts, time and time again, they say, Avi, I have to tell you one thing. And these are coming from Indian people. They say, Avi, we respect your people. I'm saying, what? Am I hearing right? They're like, yeah, you guys are culturally inclined. We see your kids going to mandirs and temples. We don't know how you do that. How are you getting your kids involved? We can't even do that with our own community.
Right.
So I was like, they're finally getting it. So it's, you know, it's...
So I'm going to ask you a question.
Yeah.
What are you? Are you Indian? Are you West Indian? What are you? If an American person said to you, what are you? What is your response?
Wow, that's a tough question. Because I'm constantly embracing all of that, you know, in my identity. Because I grew up here as well. So there's a part of me that is also American. Being a Trinidadian, Guyanese, Indian American, that's who I am. That's like, my friends used to call me UN as a nickname. Because like, Avi, you're like all over the place in all these different communities. But I'm an unbiased individual, so I can't really say I'm from one place. But I embrace all those origins that have come from where those roots are. So I am Trinidadian, I am Guyanese, I'm also Indian, and I'm also American. I can't say, oh, I'm strictly Trinidadian or strictly Guyanese, because I have influences from all over. So it wouldn't be fair to say, you know, hey, you know. But I think if you look at our genetic DNA, if you really want to go deeper, yeah, by DNA structure, we are Indian in origin. And I think we need to embrace that a little more, educate ourselves more about the music and the traditions and all that. But at the end of the day, it's your influences that make up who you are. You know, so yeah, so I'm like the, you know, like I said, the UN.
UN.
Yeah.
You know, I always say, I refer to us as Indo-Caribbean.
Of course, I agree. I use that I say that all the time. Yeah.
And, you know, I think I personally have always embraced all cultures.
Yeah.
And I see that very much with you. I love the fact that even though you travel globally and you're doing so much in the Western world, Eastern world, that you still hold very close to your heart of who you are.
Yeah.
But that you are a musician. That
Yeah.
You're not a...
I'm not a political figure. I'm not trying to sell something else, you know? Right?
You're just
This
a
is who I
lover
am.
for music.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Avirodh, I want to touch a little bit about how you transitioned into becoming this musician. I read that you first began as a harmonium player.
Yeah, it's funny. I started learning how to sing. My dad taught me how to sing and stuff, and you know, and yeah, it was cool learning because I started teaching when I was 13. Believe it or not, at the academy.
What were you teaching?
Tabla and harmonium and vocals. I was teaching both at the time, and by the time I was 17, you know, I was managing over 150 students. So that was like not your typical teenage lifestyle, you know, per se. My life was either school, teaching, or performing. That was it, like all the time. And so I started learning how to sing, and that helped me really to transition into tabla because if you understand the grammar of singing, then you can accompany better on tabla. In other words, people used to tell me once, I said, Avi, if you want to learn how to play good tabla, learn how to sing. I was like, what do you mean by that? He says, yeah, if you understand how the structure of a song works, if you understand the moods, the lyrics of the song, you can actually now play the right beats at the right time, transition better into the songs. So I tell my students that today. I tell them, you know, if you're going to learn tabla with me, fine, but I also suggest you also take a vocal and a harmonium lesson. Not to be professional or nothing like that, no. Just learn it, and you'll see it will help you in being a better tabla player.
Why did you decide that you wanted to be a musician rather than a singer?
It was a harder route, and then the perception is the singers always get all the attention. Drummers are always in the background, especially in our community. They're like, yeah, you're just a tabla player, you're knocking the drum steady. You know, that's the perception. And
How do you feel about that?
It's okay because that's what our community, that's the terminology, that's what they know, you know. But as I started like discovering the work of Zakir Hussain, Talvin Singh in the electronic world, Karsh Khalil, I was like, wow, there's a bigger world that you can incorporate tabla and showcase in a much amazing, you know, unique way. And so after some time I realized, you know what, it's okay, let people be who they are. I think as you educate and perform and you keep organizing these kinds of events, people will start noticing. And then they'll start realizing, hey, wait a second, there's more to this. He's not just a tabla player. He represents something more. And so I said, you know what, let my work speak for itself over time. And I hope, I think over time maybe it is working, maybe it is. You know, that people are recognizing that there's more to it than just me beating a drum. So the drums, the tabla just represents, is like just a vehicle for me and the work that I'm doing.
How important would you say music is to a singer? Is the music important?
No, they're it's equally as important because if you subtract the music from a soundtrack, I mean, no matter how talented that vocalist is, you know, you get that goosebumps, and when you hear those chord changes happening, whether it's in the melody or even the rhythmic patterns, it does help to arouse that feeling. You know, whether it's a romantic song or if it's a devotional song, I mean, no doubt. I mean, singers, you have to, if you're a great singer, sure, you can do amazing things, but that musical support is just as important as a vocalist. Because if that production quality is not as good, and you know, Surendra is amazing at production work, right? His production work that he does, man, if that's not as up to par with the vocalist standard, then you're not going to be able to sell what that vocalist is doing. In other words, we sell what the vocalist is doing. And because we're kind of directing how the song is going to end up. And I'm speaking from the producer point of view now.
So Avirodh, as a producer, as a composer, how do you find the sound? How do you find the beats? Where does it come from? Do you have an inspiration?
It can come from anywhere, I think, because I mean, I grew up listening to hip-hop, R&B, Indian classical, you know, world music was like my main thing, like learning about African musical traditions, Latin music traditions. What I discovered was that in every culture there is a purity that exists in the musical form, especially in its traditional element. I saw it in our West Indian Tan singing. I saw it in the villages in India. I've seen it on tour when I went to Switzerland last year, listening to you know, even Italian music. There are certain elements that just resonates with your soul, and there's this spiritual energy that exists around the whole world that I've been feeling as I got older. That if you can tap into that spirituality, then it doesn't matter what beat or what it is, as long as you can hone into that spirituality, I think the music will emanate that. In other words, I'm not trying to make something to sell it per se. You have to be able to make it, like if you notice, we were in a prayer room, it's a music studio, but the spirituality shapes the music. So in other words, sometimes it could be a simple kick, or maybe a simple hi-hat, or even a tabla beat, but it's how you place it, how you use it. If I can spiritually connect with that beat, and it's done in the proper way, I think naturally others will connect with it as well. I always tell my friends and colleagues that if you're true to the art form, and you're on stage playing, and if you connect to it as a musician, then other people will be able to connect with it. A lot of artists are still learning to discover that quality. Because they're thinking, okay, I have to sell myself. I have to become, I have to sing, I have to make it sound good so it's entertaining for the crowd. I've never played for the crowd. Up to this day, I've never competed in a competition just because I didn't want to sell myself in that way. You know, no doubt, it has its place. Don't get me wrong. But I think your work should speak for itself, like I said earlier. And if you're truly connected to the art form, other people will naturally connect with it.
Who are you playing for?
As of right now, or
If you're not playing for the audience, who are you playing for?
playing for God.
Playing for God.
Every time I sit on stage and play tabla, it's not a performance. It's a puja to the divine.
I love that.
Yeah, and that's my mindset that I go into. That's like me going, you know, like when you see artists like getting in, like they're honing in and they're kind of like getting ready to perform. That's like my green room moment. It's like, all right, I'm going to think about my ancestors. I'm going to think about God, and I'm about to perform a hawan here on stage
Through the art
of playing tabla.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I want to connect to the tabla.
Okay.
I want to connect to the sound of a drum.
Okay.
Now, when we think of the tabla, we think of an East Indian instrument,
Sure.
drumming. But there are other different types of drums all around the world. There's African drumming.
Sure.
There's West Indian drumming with the
Yeah, even steel pan in the
steel band. There is American drums itself.
yeah.
When we think of all of these drums and you as a tabla player, well, first, can you play all of these different types of drums?
Yes. So part of my training, and as I had mentors growing up, one of the qualities that I recognized was you need to have one instrument and be amazingly good at it. Okay, don't jump around. Find something you're good at and develop that instrument. So in my case, it was tabla. So I took the liberty and I said, okay, let me stay in this path for about at least 15, 20 years. And what I discovered was when you understand one tradition very well, it's very easy to assimilate and to incorporate things from other traditions, you know. And so when I learned to pick up drum kick, I listened to a lot of AC/DC, like stuff like that. And I listened to the drummer. I can feel what the drummer is feeling, you know. If I listen to the vocalist or if I hear another artist from another tradition, I can easily connect it. So when I started playing drum kit, all I had to, because I had rhythm was already in me, just give me 2 weeks, and I was able to pick it up less than 2 weeks. Or even kanjira, like a South Indian percussion, it's a small hand drum. In 2 days, Lech, I picked that drum up. People are like, Avi, how long have you been playing this? I said, just 2 days. It's like, it sounds like you've been playing this forever. And I was like, yeah, because I think that happens because you're able to translate that, you know, because you spend so much time in being disciplined in one art, that when you do decide to jump into all these other drums, it was very easy to translate that knowledge into all of those instruments and vice versa. Bring in those traditions back into my tabla playing. So, yeah, in a nutshell, that's, I think, yeah.
So other than tabla, because of course I'm going to assume that tabla is your first love when we
of course.
think of instruments.
Yeah.
Other than tabla, is there another drum
That I really enjoy?
that you really enjoy?
Well, like I just described, I just picked up an instrument called kanjira. It is a small hand drum. I used it at the Ramayana in the Park last August. First time our community was exposed to it in that capacity. And my dad was performing, and that little drum, my goodness, the amount of bass that you get out of that, you can hear like a whole drum kit coming out of this little hand drum. And great masters like Silva Ganesh, who I've been working with the last 2 years, being in his company, watching him like a hawk. And what everything he's doing, I'm like learning. Because learning is not just you sitting there and practicing something. You can learn just from observation. And so I've been observing and studying his movements. And next thing you know, like I say, you know what, let me just order one of these drums and let me see what happens. Oh my God, that's like my new love right now. You have no idea. It's like, oh, it's amazing. I have it somewhere out there, yeah.
You'll definitely show that to me a little
Sure,
bit.
sure.
Let's talk about jugglebandis.
Yeah.
I know you've done jugglebandis.
Oh yeah, I love that element, yeah.
How about, I mean, have you ever done one with as many different drums as possible?
As many different drums as possible, yeah.
When are you going to do this?
Yeah. So I mean, that process already started. Like, you know, working with like drum kit masters, even producers like Karsh Kali recently, doing stuff with him. You know, even like earlier this year at the Arya Spiritual Center, I organized a concert called Colors of India, and I took that upon myself to do. Just again, it's an important step for our community to be exposed to the rhythmic traditions. So we had a ghatam player, which is another percussion instrument. We had a drum kit player. We had a kanjira player. I was on tabla, and then we had a hybrid kit player. And so we did this massive jugglebandi amongst like 6 of us. Oh my God, we shook that mandir up. Like, you have no idea. People are like, like super like buzzed from that. But I think what Jugalbandi does, I mean, I live for those moments because it's not really about testing to see what the other musician is going to do. Mm-hmm. It's more of like, okay, you know what, out of respect, I'm going to play this. Let me see what you're going to do with that. Mm-hmm. And out of respect, we kind of throw the ball to that side, and let's see how you're going to respond to that. And that's how you gain respect from one musician to the next. It's the way you respond. And I love that moment because I think that's when your true colors reveal itself. A lot of guys can try to fake things when they play this and that, but in a Jugalbandi setting, there is no pre-planned template. We have no idea what's going to happen next. So it's in those moments, I think, I live for those kind of moments.
Do you have a favorite tabla player that you look up to?
Many tabla players, but I mean, it's almost like a cliche now. I mean, Zakir Hussain is one of my greatest influences as a kid growing up. When I was a teenager, and I think this is what kind of got me involved to take the world music route. I was about 14 years old, and I heard a recording, an album called Rhythmic Experience, and there was this one track called it's called the Rhythm Sonata in E major. It was the first time I heard tabla in an orchestral form. And the way he arranged not just music with rhythm, but the rhythm became the melody. You know? I was like, I didn't know tabla can do this. And that just blew my mind, you know? And so when I went to my first Zakir Hussain concert, I was about 16, 17 years old, and it was at, I think, Lincoln Center or Carnegie Hall. It changed my life forever. I was like, you know what? I think I can see myself doing this. If he can have this kind of an impact, touching people, and it's the experience, not just your beat. Like I said, we're not just playing beats. Every time I play, my entire life translates through that stroke. Every beat that I play, it's like, that's what my whole life comes down to, is every beat that I play. And I felt that same impression when Zakir played. And many other great masters I've been in company with, like Anindo Chatterjee, he's another great master. But yeah, that was like a pivotal moment where I said, you know what, as a West Indian musician, you know what, I can see myself being being something in the world music scene. Because at the time, I looked around in the landscape in our community, and I was like, this is not being promoted at all. Why should, you know, I think maybe I could be that person. And it just happened. I did it for fun. It started as a hobby. And next thing you know, it became a passion. And then next thing you know, here I am with you having this interview.
Yeah. So 16, 17, you went to a concert at Lincoln Center thinking that, you know what, I can do this.
Yeah.
And on December
10th, yeah,
you will be doing this. But before we talk about that,
yeah,
I want to touch a little bit about, tell our viewers, you have traveled around the world.
Yeah.
You have done concerts, east, west,
yeah.
north, south,
Sure.
you name it.
Yeah.
Tell us about, name a few of the concerts that you have been part of.
Okay.
And then I want to know, which one of these concerts has been your favorite?
Oh boy, that's a great question. I mean, as of recently, we talked about the Taj Mahal experience earlier, 2 years ago. That was an important moment for me on stage because as I was playing, I felt like I was returning home. It was that moment. And I can feel my ancestors were with me that day, like in energy and spirit, because I felt that it was 3 generations ago that our ancestors left India, went to the Caribbean, and here I am presenting back the tradition into India, having developed my skills in the Western world. And I think that was a huge 360 moment, like, you know, a huge circle moment. So that was a very special moment. Another moment was playing in a festival in Italy called Artisti in Piazza. Yeah, this was last year. It was amazing. Like, the people were they're so open to learning about new things, you know? And so, yeah, they've seen a lot of tabla players before, but when they got to hear about my story, being West Indian, and then I started playing some chutney beats and stuff on tabla, they're like, whoa, we've never heard this on rhythms before. And then I realized, wait a second, we have so much untapped potential in our music, in our community. Yeah. And I think movies like Dabang, you know, remember? Where they did that Sundar Popo song?
Yes.
Did you hear that?
I remember. Mm-hmm.
It's amazing that they're now kind of coming back to us to gain inspiration. So it's there, it's happening. But I felt like now I think we're at the perfect time, the perfect junction to be able to bring these communities together.
I will always said that there will come a time that people from India will go to the Caribbean.
And they are, by the way.
Yeah. For culture. Because we have
that's an interesting observation.
Our culture and our religion so much.
So can I share something? I'm glad you said that. So we have, you know how we play dantal, right?
Yes.
That was an instrument, I think, that existed at one time in India. It no longer exists out there. When I spoke to some academians, is that a word? No, some historians, and they're like, yeah, you guys are the only ones preserving it, and now we're using you as a reference now, because we don't have any other place in India or anywhere to. You're right. So you're absolutely right. And that even in our Tan, local classical, these are the things I think are being preserved in the Caribbean, and it is becoming the source for that.
It's a lost folk.
Jomi George, you know?
Yes, of course.
We were talking the other day. He's like, man, your dholak players are so sick. I was like, yeah, tell me about it. He's like, yeah, man, nobody plays like that. I was like, I agree, and we're going to start promoting those. I just recently recorded Sailesh. He just came here last week. We were working on a track. We were planning a tour. I'm trying to get him on board, bring in some Tasa players, and working with Zakir Hussein's younger brother to plan an East Coast tour. So again, this is for the first time we're trying to bring, again, the West Indian rhythms with the Eastern, and people are seeing the potential of it now, because I think we are positioned now to do that. Before, because we weren't educated enough about the Indian traditions as a whole, I'm not saying individually, but as a whole, there was that barrier. So now that there was a disconnect, but now I don't think that's there now, because they're beginning to know us for who we really are. Now in 2017. So I think it's making it a lot easier to start those conversations now.
I've always said, I'm not trying to turn this on me.
No. But you're an important part of this process.
But, part of I have lots of friends from India, and anytime they visit anything I have, whether it be a puja, an event, they always say, Laksh, you're more Indian than we are.
I get that too all the time.
And
you're absolutely right.
Amazed how much we uphold the culture and the religion.
Yes, I agree.
And I say to them that when you have kids, or if they already have kids, my friends that were born in India and here, if you don't teach your child Hindi, they will never know it. If you don't teach your child the music, they will never know it.
Yeah.
But if you do, what's the difference of your child being born in America versus your child being born in Guyana or Trinidad? Are they still not Indian?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, they're still Indian, absolutely.
They're still Indian. It's
absolutely.
what you do to uphold your culture and your tradition.
Correct.
Is what will mold that child.
I agree with you 110%, Lech. That's it. And I wish every parent can understand that, because we've been dealing with parents at the academy for all these years, and that's why the school became a major, I would say, it's a landmark now in our community. And many, in the early 90s, when we had that huge immigrant explosion of Guyanese and Trinidadians coming here, they didn't know where to turn to. So it just happened, the school was there. My dad's vision was to be able to take a child and say, okay, you can learn some bhajans, learn some classical, go back to your mandars and contribute, because he saw there were only older heads in the temples, but there was no youth influence. So he was a visionary in that way. He saw this in the early 90s, and he's like, you know what? I think I can make this happen. And 25 years later, that's exactly what happened.
Want to change the world.
Yeah.
Teach a child.
That's right. That's right. I agree.
So let's go back to, what was your favorite concert?
What was my favorite? From where? Like which part?
You tell me.
There's too many. Too many favorite concerts.
So we touched upon Taj Mahal.
Yeah.
Give me two more favorite ones. I mean, you've been everywhere.
Yeah, it's just so many. Like there's just so much.
Here in New York City.
Yeah, New York too has.
You've been everywhere.
Like each one is special. That's why it's so hard to differentiate them. Like, because every time I play, it's like it's one of a kind moment, kind of thing. I think as of recently, those were the two most outstanding. I think those moments. But I think the concert coming up in Lincoln Center, that might become one of those moments as well, because it's a testament to what my journey so far. And last 2-3 years I performed. Oh yeah, I now remember it. Yeah, I performed at Princeton University in 2014, and I played with this amazing Santoor Maestro. His name is Tarun Bhattacharya. He's like one of India's greatest. I don't know if you've ever seen that instrument. Beautiful instrument. So it was about 5 of us that played, and we got a standing ovation after that show at Princeton University. And again, this West Indian kid playing on tabla, playing in those communities. again, my parents were there to witness it, and I can tell I got an award at the end, a beautiful award, and I gave it to my mom. I said, "Mom, this is for you," because I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if it wasn't for their hard work.
Let's talk about this West Indian kid hitting the world music charts, #1. What was it, 8 weeks in a row?
Yeah, it's been crazy.
Let's talk about this.
So this album, it's called Melodic Intersect, Looking Forward. It's a bunch of us that came together from all different parts of the world. And I've been blessed, again, to be positioned with the right musicians over the course of the last 5-6 years now, that we've been charting in world music charts, especially jazz stations. And right now the album is doing very well across, again, in DC. DC has a huge jazz concentration there, even in Europe as well. And so this album, Looking Forward, I did some percussion work on the album. And we are already on the Grammy ballot for the next Grammy Awards. And in 2015 I was also on another album that was on the Grammys. But I think we're positioned today that we may get a Grammy nomination. So crossing my fingers.
You will.
That it may happen. But I don't place expectations, Laksh, because expectations lead to disappointments. So if it happens, good. If it doesn't, I'm still happy that it's gotten this far, So yeah.
Well, and I need to be there when you actually go on stage and accept that.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, Lex. Thank you.
So let's talk about this young West Indian kid, this young Indo-Caribbean kid, who at 16, 17 years old went to Lincoln Center and was looking at the stage and saw a musician up there and got inspired, because in just a few days, Avirodh, you're going to be on that stage. So what's going to happen on December 10th?
So it's a meeting of Indian classical music and jazz. So there's a series called Jazz at Lincoln Center, and it's going to be an Indo jazz festival. And so there's some really amazing musicians that I've been working with, and I'll be working with on this project, on this performance. Hidayat Khan on sitar. He's the son of the legendary Vilayat Khan. He's basically, like, when you think of Ravi Shankar and Vilayat Khan, they're like the two kings in sitar, And so I'll be collaborating with him. A jazz organist, his name is Greg Hatsa. Another tabla player, a friend of mine, his name is Inayat Hussain. A bunch of other guys, and we're basically bringing, again, jazz and Indian classical music together at Lincoln Center. And so it's going to be a first time for me, and I'm hoping to get our West Indian support. It's going to be a first for our community, again, in that matter. And I believe this is going to be the beginning of something new that's going to start again for our community. And the reason why I'm doing these kind of events and participating is to show what is possible. Sure. It's bigger than me and you. And so I just happen to be at the right place at the right time to be able to do these things. I just want to be clear with that. It's not about me. I'm just using this avenue to promote the bigger picture, which is our culture and our roots.
Yeah. You are erupting a movement.
Yeah.
That is what you're doing.
Well, you have started a movement too, yourself, in your own right, girl. My goodness.
We're doing it together. Maybe different types, but we're doing it together.
Yeah.
Because our people have earned it. And we need a platform for people to understand what the Indo-Caribbean person is.
Yes.
And what the Indo-Caribbean person has.
Or what the Indo-Caribbean experience is. Let's put it that way.
I love that. What is the Indo-Caribbean experience?
Yeah.
It's so much.
It is.
The Avirodh Sharmas. It's the Mahadev Shivras.
Yeah.
It's the Anjali Parade.
Sure. Yeah.
It's the Ben Prague.
Yeah.
It's the Lakshmi Singhs.
Yeah.
It's the Pernashes.
Sure.
The Amits. There is so much. It's the Ramji Halls. You name it.
Yeah.
We have it in our community, and
we should be proud about it. Yes, I'm not going to say that.
I'm so proud to sit here with you. You were actually the second person on Let's Talk with Lakshmi when you first started.
And look how far you've come.
And look how far you have come. We've come here together. We're sharing this road. We may not speak yearly or monthly or whatever it may be.
But I have great respect for you.
You're on the right path.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud of what you're representing and what you're doing for our people, the Indo-Caribbean people.
Thank you, Lakshmi. Thank you.
Like you, I know it's safe to say that one, we have a platform now,
Yes, we do.
right?
Yes, we
Where
do.
people will know who we are, respect who we are, and more importantly, be educated on the Indo-Caribbean experience.
Yeah. I think the social media, the last 10 years, the advent of social media has changed that landscape. I think people are exploring the Caribbean more. I mean, I know a lot of Chinese now in Trinidad visiting and migrating. Indians are going there to start businesses, and they're like, yeah, we love the culture out there. The calypso, the chutney, the tan, and all of that. So yeah, you're right.
So Avirodh, where am I going to see you in 5 years?
I don't know. That's a great question. I'm always on a trajectory, but it's always changing. But in 5 years, I hope to have children. I hope to be. Right now I consider I'm in a position where I'm not in a desperate position where I have to run behind every concert per se.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm using that time to leverage what difference I can really make for the community. And so in the next 5 years, hopefully, I think the community will have a better sense of awareness of the rhythmic traditions that have been trying to promote the last 20 years, which has been an uphill climb. It's been tough, Lex. It's been very hard to get people to come out to shows, but I'm doing my best. And we are getting a turnout now, by the way. The last 2 years, 3 years, people are kind of finally catching on. They're like, oh, okay, it's not just about him. It's not, no, there's a bigger movement here. So, but more people are turning out to shows. So I'm hoping with my continued efforts, I hope to keep contributing in our community and keep letting it expand.
You're doing a great job.
Yeah, thank you, Lex.
We are going to be there on the 10th.
Thank you.
Lincoln
Thanks.
Center
Yeah.
to see you perform.
Thank you.
And
That'll be
represent
awesome.
our Indo-Caribbean community.
It'll be great to have you, Lech. It'll be awesome. Thank you again for having me.
You're welcome.
At Triple Crown Auto Sales, we are driven to be the different, the best, to be your luxury car dealership. Don't be a victim of bad credit or no credit. Let us get you into a luxury car today. Guaranteed credit approval. All income are welcome. Self-employed, cash, Social Security fixed income or disability, W-2 unemployed fixed income. Let us show you the respect you just don't get from other dealers. We know that bad things happen to good people. Everyone deserves to drive in luxury. Visit us at triplecrowncars.com or call us at 516-488-2200.
Libby provides an educational experience to succeed in today's complex and changing business environment.
And supports the immediate efforts of our students while laying the foundation for lifelong learning.
I want to move up to management, so I'm in the hospitality management program.
I'm passionate about the safety of our community, so I'm in the Homeland Security and Security Management program.
We are a military-approved school, and we participate in the Yellow Ribbon program.
Libby provides lifetime job placement assistance.
To learn more about our degrees and certificates, visit our website at libby.edu.
2 months ago, after my mother's hospitalization, the doctors wanted to put her in hospice. And I'm like, they deemed her terminal. And I saw Mr. Thakur, I think the founder, on TV, and he was advertising this Indian community in Kings Harbor. It's a great Indian community where my mother feels at home, and she expresses her happiness to me whenever I come.
I know when I come, I feel happy. I stay couple and I see everybody, and I'm so happy.
I brought my mother here like a month and a half ago, and I haven't regretted my decision. It's one of the best decisions I've made for my mother. It's a home away from home.